Hello and welcome to Dr. VGP TALK SHOW. Welcome to the 50th episode of Dr. VGP TALK SHOW that reaches 42 million households, including 2 million households across America. Today, we have a very special guest. Our research team, headed by Dr. Vasavi Chakka, wanted someone innovative, someone phenomenal, someone who's special, who's doing extraordinary work which has not yet been brought to the world's eyes. And that person is a young Bangalore girl who studied in Bangalore, a Kannadiga, married to a Punjabi Sardar, landed in the United States in 1986 and is trying to transform the world of the victims of human trafficking. Listen to her inspirational journey, the challenges she has met for the last 20 years, and how she in the last 10 years has established a one of its kind not-for-profit and founded and established the Safe Coalition for Human Rights, which is doing a phenomenal job today in taking care of the victims of human trafficking, integrating them into the society by giving them free home, boarding, education, healthcare, work training, counseling, companionship, which has never been done before in the Midwest. Meet Dr. KALYANI Gopal, a vibrant, devoted, energetic clinical psychologist transforming lives daily, 50 a year, and continuing in. Let's go to the Safe Coalition for Human Rights' Ashley House, an undisclosed location in the state of Indiana, which is a beacon of hope and a home away from home for the chosen few. The best way to describe our guest on our show today, Dr. Kalyani Gopal, is by reading this poem, which is penned by one of the clients who graduated from this Ashley House. This poem is written by a 32-year-old Caucasian.
It's written by a 32-year-old girl who's Caucasian, and she went through a horrific experience, many horrific experiences, has helped the state in the process, and she's now successfully moved to her own life and graduated.
And this poem is handwritten and displayed in the dining room of Ashley House. When I saw it, I thought I must recite it for you today so you can understand the work of Dr. Kalyani Gopal at just the beginning of our interview. The new me. Who am I today? I had to change who I was. I let go of the old me. The person I am today is the new me. Who am I today? I who I want to be. The old me will never be. The new me is the person to be. Friends, the impactful poem written by a 32-year-old Caucasian victim of human trafficking who lived in this Ashley House on her graduation is so profound. You will know more about it and learn about Dr. Kalyani Gopal in this enlightening episode. Hello and welcome to Dr. VGP Talk Show that reaches 42 million households across the world, including 2 million households in America. In this 50th episode of Dr. VGP Talk Show, we are featuring a very unique personality who is dedicated to her life to one of the most challenging causes, which is combating us throughout the world. Welcome, Dr. Kalyani Gopal from Indiana to Dr. VGP Talk Show.
Very appreciative. Thank you so much.
Dr. Gopal, it's lovely to have you at Dr. VGP Talk Show. Could you tell us about your early childhood and bringing up? I know you're a brigadier's daughter who was born in Kannadiga from Bangalore.
Born in Bangalore.
Born in Bangalore. So you were educated and did your MPhil at the NIMS, which is the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, one of the most renowned institutions in the whole of Asia. And as you were telling me earlier, do you all know that the NIMS had its origin in 1838 when it was a open mental health facility for soldiers, and in 1948 it became a lunatic asylum, as it was called those days when mental health was not coined, or behavioral health as we call it now, open to the public. And it's one of the oldest institutions. And Dr. Kalyani Gopal, our guest today, is an alumni of NIMS. NIMHANS it's called. NIMHANS, which is the National Institute of Mental Health and Neuroscience. And she met her better half, Professor Jaswinder Singh, a Punjabi Sardar, in NIMS, who was a senior.
That's right.
So the Kannadiga Punjab couple are now in Indiana. They came to United States in 1986, and let's hear a story and a journey. Dr. Gopal.
So when I came here in 86, I came as a graduate student at Vanderbilt University. My goal was to do cognitive neuroscience. I was very motivated, and I went to, then I gradually segued into human trafficking and child sexual abuse over the course of the next 30 years.
So, Dr. Kalyani Gopal, a clinical psychologist with an MPhil from NIMHANS, came to do her doctorate in Vanderbilt University in Tennessee. And then all of a sudden, in her practical training, one fine morning, a 7-year-old girl sat on her lap, which changed her whole journey. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. I was doing group with the kids at the school. So I was at the school, which is the D.D. Wallace School in Nashville. And this little girl who was blonde, blonde haired, blue eyed, comes and sits on my lap, and she said her father was touching her. That literally shocked me so much because I'm extremely close to my dad. I absolutely adored him. And I couldn't imagine something like this happening. And that changed my entire trajectory.
So from being a mental health advocate, you transitioned into helping the children of sexual incest.
Correct. Sexual incest, sexual abuse by family members.
And then how did that lead you? Tell us the journey from there. How did it progress?
So what happened is that children started talking to me. This girl would not talk to anybody else. So
she was a Caucasian.
Caucasian
and
girl.
You were fresh off the boat.
I'm fresh off the boat, fresh off the plane here, coming here as a legal immigrant, right? And I'm here, and then I'm looking at this child, and I have no idea what to say because I'm all about brain and behavior relationships. And here I was doing something completely different. And so after a while, I started getting more and more cases of child sexual abuse because these children were talking to me. So my supervisor actually said, you know what, Kalyani, you might want to be doing more of these cases. And then I started becoming a so-called specialty area. It became a specialty area for me. And I started doing a PhD also in that. I ended up doing my PhD in neuroscience, neuropsychology, because taking a PhD in child sexual abuse meant looking at some of these videos of children 3 and below. And the Attorney General in Illinois at that time said, if I let you look at all these videos, then we're not sure what the outcome is going to be. So basically it became a little complicated. And as a result of that, I ended up doing a neuropsychology PhD. It's like a second PhD almost. Doing that PhD, and then I graduated soon after. 4 months later, it was start to finish 4 months of that data collection.
Dr. Gopal, it's very interesting and a very serious issue, sexual incest in this country and worldwide phenomenon. And then also the system which prevails in America today of foster care, having children who don't have their parents or are abused at their home. The state mandates a home for it to come into foster care. And tell us about the pattern behavior of a victim of sexual incest in early childhood. How do they grow up to be, and what are the psychological patterns?
So there's 4 different areas that are sequelae for child sexual abuse. There's cognitive, there's emotional, there's cognitive, and then there's behavioral.
So cognitive, emotional,
cognitive, and behavioral. So basically what happens is that the child's thinking, the impact of the trauma, changes the way the child reacts to her environment, his or her environment. Now, child sexual abuse happens just as much as in boys as it happens in girls. Boys tend to act out. We end up calling them hyperactive. We diagnose them with different things. And later in life, they turn to drugs and either human trafficking or suicide. Girls, on the other hand, go from child sexual abuse to human trafficking to domestic violence relationships and then homicide. So the trajectory for girls versus boys is very different, which is why I think this is the reason I think I do what I do.
Could you just repeat what you said, the process, how it goes to homicide?
Okay, so from boys, they go from child sexual abuse to substance abuse to more substance abuse and crime. They end up in the juvenile system, they end up in the prison system, they commit homicide. Suicide. They commit suicide.
Suicide, okay, yes. That's what I was saying. Okay.
They kill themselves.
Yeah.
So boys, when they go through human trafficking, after having been sexually abused as children, after having gone to drugs, and basically it's survival sex at that point, and they're being pimped out by other people, excuse my language, but that's what happens. They then end up committing suicide because the devastation is so severe. So for example, right now, Justin Bieber, the whole case is going on with Sean Diddy Combs. This whole case is now huge in Hollywood.
Now tell us about it.
Okay, so what has happened is Sean Combs was found that he was trafficking. He was found guilty of trafficking. The FBI tracked him down, and what's happened as a result of that, he's escaped, or tried to escape, but 3 people in the process have come out. There's videos that have come out about him molesting musicians, young musicians. Sean Combs.
How old is he?
I don't know how old he is now,
okay.
But Justin Bieber was 10 years old.
A young musician.
Young musician, and in exchange for fame. And one of his songs actually is, I was listening to the other day, it talks about, in exchange for fame, I lost my soul. It's such a profound statement. And it happened not only to him, it's happened to so many Hollywood actors and actresses. So it's really a big issue at this point. And there's a song he's come out with about being lonely, and it's so heartbreaking because no one truly understands the impact of child sexual abuse. No one really, and that's the reason when I opened up this center, is because all the women I have here were abused as children. And then they entered the world the same trajectory.
Dr. Gopal, you have touched on a very profound statement. You keep dropping the word human trafficking. Could you define what is human trafficking? Because a lot of people have their own concoctions, their own definition of images of human trafficking. Tell us what is human trafficking.
So human trafficking in the basic, simple layman terms is the sale of one human being by another human being through force, fraud, or coercion for the purpose of personal or commercial gain.
So you're telling us human trafficking, and in my mind what conjures up is a prostitution den, drug dealers, and that goes into, what does that lead to?
That goes into the person either being killed or having multiple autoimmune disorders, and that's another thing we deal with. So the long-term effects of childhood ACEs and the long-term effects of adverse childhood experiences and the long-term effects of childhood issues.
So what Dr. Gopal is telling us today is that victims who are being abused as children by sexual incest or through other means, they become ideal candidates for human trafficking, which lands into a prostitution den or being with part of the drug dealership. So Dr. Gopal is telling us that the victims of sexual incest, the children who are being sexually abused, they usually are the favorites to land up in the human trafficking corridor.
Absolutely.
And from there they are funneled into either a prostitution den or a drug dealership, and that leads into a whole array of needing mental health.
Absolutely. Mental health treatment, physical treatment.
Tell us more about it, enlighten us. And that's what has led Dr. Gopal, which we didn't tell you earlier, has set up the Safe Coalition for Human Rights. It's a 501c3 not-for-profit set up in 2014 in the state of Indiana, but is servicing victims who need victims of human trafficking across the country. The FBI refers cases to them, and she has established an Ashley's House. That's a safe haven for these victims of human trafficking to be rehabilitated into human society.
Absolutely.
What a great vision which you are making into reality,
Thanks.
Dr. Gopal.
Thank you.
And Dr. Gopal is not alone. She has a board of directors, a very diverse board of directors. Could you tell us about the Safe Coalition for Human Rights?
So Safe Coalition for Human Rights began in 2014 after I, as a private practitioner, didn't want to open up a non-profit. I wanted to have some non-profit take out the fiscal sponsorship for a conference. And because I couldn't find a fiscal sponsor to take on the conference and the taxes would be high, I ended up opening up my own nonprofit in Illinois, in downtown Chicago. And since then, after the conference, the need for jobs, the need for housing, the need for education, the need for mental health treatment, and the need for comprehensive physical care was so great that I realized we had to do a lot more. And as a result of that, 10 years later, this is our 10th anniversary, 10 years later, this house where we're sitting right now is called Ashley's House, and it's been in operations for 3 years. And we've had 50 women come through. 4 of them graduated from college for the first time. Their families had never gone to college, even finished high school. We've had 8 babies born here.
Wow.
And we've had about 30 children who've come and gone.
You're just hearing Dr. Gopal giving her incredible story where she has founded a safe haven for the victims, could I say them, the victims of human trafficking, the only one of its kind in the Midwest, I'm sure.
With the clinical load that we have here.
And it also not only gives them home board, but they have the clinical setting, clinical psychological counseling, as well as giving them education, imparting training to get them back on the feet and integrating them into society. It's a very, very innovative, very noble work which you're doing. And this is an undisclosed location, because the perpetrators will still try to track these people to get them back into the fold so they can use them, and that's what's called human trafficking. And Dr. Gopal and her board of the Safe Coalition of Human Rights are doing a phenomenal job in transforming lives practically, and every year there are 50 women served here in this home. Today she has 3 women, 3 small children, and
we have 4 staff.
And she has a waiting list. And tell us some of the experiences, what you have been through, real life cases, to our viewers to able to grasp and understand the reality of what you're doing. We've heard of orphanages, blind homes, deaf homes, so many philanthropic work, but this is something truly amazing, a safe coalition for human rights where the victims of human trafficking are being nurtured and brought back into normal life. So please tell us, share some experiences.
I have so many cases. I can tell you one case which has really affected me quite a bit. This is a lady who is about 27 years old. She was trafficked at the age of 14 in Chicago, downtown Chicago. Her name is Nancy Jackson. She passed away in 2022 December from stage 4 breast cancer. And this is unfortunately a story for a lot of our victims. So we try to save them from death literally at this point. Because if we can nurture them and heal them and get them the physical treatment they need, they don't have to go without treatment for so long that the illness progresses to the point of terminal. And so she has left behind 3 small children who we now take care of as our own children. But her story is beautiful because she went from being trafficked. It took me 9 months to get her out of the world of trafficking. It's very hard for them to leave because there's a trauma bond, which is an intense love-hate bond that develops between the trafficker and the child or the victim. It's like so you've heard of these syndromes before, and this is a very intense bond. And because of that bond, she wasn't able to leave. But the beauty is, and the real beauty of it is, once she left, she had both feet in. She became a house manager after graduating from our program. And she stayed a house manager until she passed away.
That's so interesting to see how you took a 14-year-old off the streets of Chicago who was very much part of a human trafficking group, and you took it 9 months to wean her away.
9 months.
And must have taken the best of your clinical psychological skills, your human relation skills, working with people, your people skills, because it requires a very special person to break into that niche and to make things happen. And unfortunately, you lost her to breast cancer, and she's got 3 small children which you're bringing up. It is something extraordinary. You were recently on a visit to Delhi last month.
I was.
And you were telling me about how human trafficking doesn't limit itself to prostitution and drug dealers, but also beggars. In India, we're very common with beggars. In an organized beggars, I would say, market or beggars mafia, an organized system where there's a head honcho, and I think that's prevalent in all metropolitan cities in USA too. Tell us what you saw and share with our viewers.
So when I was in Delhi, I was having a cup of tea actually in Connaught Place, and I met with a social worker, case manager, and we were talking about human trafficking. And I was talking about the beggars because we grew up in India, so we're used to having beggars around temples and other places. And so, but I didn't make the connection between human trafficking and beggary at that time. But this is literally a mafia. They take the children at a very young age, and then they coach them and groom them to beg. They have to bring a certain amount of earnings. If they don't bring X amount of money back, and so there's a almost like a step up. There's a lower level, then a middle level, and a higher level. So it goes to different levels and you have different titles for those different levels, up to the head person. And so this is and they're spread out like a network. It's like a rabid network around the country.
And the parents are actively involved with the organizers of this beggars mafia.
Absolutely.
And it's an organized network exploiting young children, taking them away from school, giving them incentives, making them work 12 hours a day. And also the other aspect Dr. Gopal confronted in child labor and sweat. It's called the sweat lodges, where child are being used not only in India as child labor, in fireworks factory, in diamond mines. Please enlighten.
So I work with kids from Africa, from the tin mines, right? So they're in Kenya and Kivu region, for example, they have the tin mines. And so the women, we were trying to empower them. And I was working with another person. She's a former minister of Uganda. For social development. So she was very connected with all of that. And the women from the tin mines, they were trying to bring them out of being trafficked into self-resiliency. There's a whole program going on there. There's a lot going on, but again, they suffer because they have a lot of conflict going on in that region, the whole world basically. So they're going through a lot of conflict. And because of all that conflict, they're experiencing difficulties in connecting with the labor victims. So they're disappearing. So for example, if you look at the statistics right now, 71% of all trafficked individuals are female. They're women and girls. They're trafficked far more than males are. And the women trafficking is for labor and sex combined. But it's also another level of trafficking that I want to raise is called adoption trafficking, transnational trafficking. And India has actually stopped that. I'm very proud of India. I was talking to the people in Kara yesterday. And one of the beautiful things that's happening in India is that India has now digitalized everything, including foster care. So they've learned from the problems we have in foster care here, because foster care to human trafficking is another pipeline. So kids who are disappearing in foster care, 12, 13, 14 years old, from group homes, from foster homes, they disappear. And they're the easiest victims because no one's looking for them. We say that they've gone AWOL, it's like the military term. They've gone AWOL, after a while no one's looking for them, and then they've disappeared. So it's a foster care to human trafficking pipeline we have here. And we have over 450,000 children that are in foster care in any given time. In America. And there's another 400,000 children that are missing in America that we don't know about at all. So Indian ministry, for example, has come out here. I've talked a lot about foster care with them because I was really worried about what was happening or going to happen. But what they've done is they've digitalized the whole system, connecting foster parents with children, connecting birth parents and trying to find the birth parents to make sure that human trafficking is not happening. So last week, there was a situation where in Andhra Pradesh or Telangana, they took the children from the adoptive parents because all those kids had been trafficked. So the government went in, took those kids who are trafficking victims, and they're now trying to find their biological families. So there's a lot happening in India, which I'm very proud of, because I think India is taking the charge that we need to protect our kids. And I was talking to Dr. Pati a few days ago about this, who is the director of Kara. And we were saying, how do we make this so that it doesn't turn south? So the whole foster care to adoption system doesn't change and mess.
Dr. Gopal has just given us some startling revelations. She says 71% of human traffickers are women, and that's mainly traffic victims are women, and that's mainly through labor, work, and sex. She also alluded to the fact that adoption process, transnational, is a huge forum for human trafficking. And of course, she told us earlier about the beggars mafia, which is there. She also has hit on a very, very poignant and significant aspect, which we are all very familiar here in America with foster care. There are today over 450,000 children in foster care in America, and she says the foster care is a pipeline for human trafficking, because from foster care these children get lost. They're reported lost, and there's no follow-up in this country for the children in foster care who are lost. They get human trafficking, and today there are over 400,000 children, my friends, in America who are lost. It's a colossal number. The work Dr. Gopal and the Safe Coalition for Human Rights in India are doing are phenomenal. We ask you to support them, and down of the screen we have we have the email ID scrolling down the screen where you can send your donations and contributions, which are always welcome. The Ashley House, which Dr. Gopal is running, is becoming crowded. She needs to move to a bigger place, and she is expecting contributions from everybody, because she doesn't get a solid fund, and this institution and this Ashley House survives month to month, and it's important for all of us to come forward and support this noble institution. This crosses all races, all religions, all nationalities. It's a true humanitarian effort which many people have overlooked today, including, I would say, the government.
Absolutely.
Because there's no grants for this type of specialized grants for them. Dr. Gopal, tell us, what are the main challenges? We heard of all your success stories, so many people you have rehabilitated. What are the primary challenges you face while you're trying to rehabilitate these human traffickers, victims of human trafficking, into normal mainstream life?
The biggest one, I think, for them is the psychological.
Okay.
They have to overcome their psychological challenges in order to be able to receive services. Trust is a big issue. Transportation, from the physical aspect, transportation is an issue for them. How do they come here? How do they then come from wherever they are to this place? How do they live here then? They don't have food stamps, they don't have clothing. They come with basically what's on their back. We provide them everything. We provide them food, we provide them clothing, we provide them education. We also give them healthcare, and we also do free therapy. I do free therapy here when I come here. But we also have medical care. We have wonderful doctors in Indiana who will help. We have St. Catherine's Hospital and our local hospitals like Methodist that help us. And then we have wonderful foundations that try to support us. Crown Point Community Foundation, the foundations in East Chicago, but they have very limited funding because their funding depends on donations too. So we're the third level of donations that they get. So that can be difficult. So these are the different challenges we have. I think the biggest challenge, the second biggest challenge for them is, once they're here, how do they then sit in that silence? Because they're used to running, running. And suddenly now you have to sit with yourself. That's the toughest thing to do, and it's like...
So you provide recreation activities.
This room right here is our silent room. It's a room where they sit in silence. I give them therapy workbooks to do, I give them different things to do. But they also have to start facing their own fears. They have to face their own actions. They've done many actions that traffickers made them do. They made them sell cocaine. They made them have fraudulent checks. They made them steal. They made them lie, steal from their customers. So they have a lot of grief, a lot of sorrow, and what we call it in psychology is basically prolonged grief disorder. From your childhood all the way, unresolved trauma over trauma over trauma. It just builds up, becomes a very complex trauma. So that's the area that I really work with all of them, is a complex traumatic treatment.
Dr. Gopal, you're doing a remarkable job for the victims of the human traffickers. You are providing the end service to rehabilitate them. Let me ask you, has anybody doing anything in the prevention aspect and the education? How do we prevent these cracks in our system, these people to fall into as a human trafficker? Is there some kind of your organization is doing this, or should there some kind of effort, a community-led effort with the media to highlight what can we do to prevent human trafficking today?
That's such a fantastic question, because I always say prevention is better than cure. I'm always dealing with cure at this point.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
I can
the
say.
tertiary state. So for prevention, we first began the whole SAFE Coalition for Human Rights to do prevention. So the prevention part was raising awareness. That conference was to raise awareness and hear the voices of the victims. Now what we do is, we've been accredited by the United Nations, the Economic and Social Council, to do trainings. So our trainings our organizations accredited back in 2021. We're also accredited by CPD, which is the group in UK. And that's continuing professional development. For doctors, physicians, psychologists, and social workers, and all the allied fields and so forth. So we have that accreditation. So we do prevention. This 30th of July, we have our event. This is our major event. It's
fundraising event.
Yes, it's a fundraising event. It's an awareness event. We have a packed room. We unfortunately have a small hall, so it can only take about 350 people, but it's always packed. And so we have legislators come in, we have governors, we have consul generals come in. So we have a lot of dignitaries that come in. But to me, the people who are the most important are those moms with kids, because they're the ones I'm trying to reach. So when they come in, I'm very pleased to see them. Moms with high schoolers, and we really encourage them to come.
So you are having on July 30th of this year, the Safe Coalition for Human Rights is having its annual gala fundraising, and where is it going to be at?
It's going to be in Maryville, Indiana.
Maryville, Indiana. They are looking forward to sponsors, table tickets are being
Absolutely.
sold. You have two very interesting panels. Tell us about those panels which are going to be
So
there.
we have two panels. We have 10 speakers. We have the Department of Homeland Security, which we call the DHS. We have the FBI. We have the United States Attorney from Northern Indiana. We have our task force chair. We have a lady who works with labor trafficking victims. We have 3 victims that are going to cover adoption trafficking, labor trafficking, and sex trafficking. They're all going to be there. We call them survivors, of course. They're all going to be there. And we have a young man who was the adopted son of Mia Farrow and Woody Allen.
Wow, adopted son of Mia Farrow and Woody Allen is going to be in person at the July 30th gala of the Safe Coalition for Human Rights, which are going to have 2 enlightening panels. You're going to hear from the FBI, you're going to hear from the US Attorney's Office, and also from the 3 survivors. It's, I think, for those of you who want to do your part in trying to stop human trafficking, the first thing is either send a donation or a contribution today to the Safe Coalition for Human Rights. You have the email ID, you have the links, PayPal and
PayPal and Ziffy. But we have also, if you really want to sign up, just go to our website, safechr.org. That's safe, S-A-F-E, C for coalition, H for human, and R for rights.org.
Yeah.
And you go under upcoming events and you'll see it all there.
Friends, every dollar can change a life. And this, I would tell you, every dollar donated to Safe Coalition for Human Rights will be worth it, because it's transforming lives. This is an opportunity to stop human trafficking, is to take care of the victims of human trafficking, and be there on July 30th. If you cannot be there on July 30th, send your contribution donation. You could also come in and volunteer. And Dr. Gopal will welcome people to volunteer.
Absolutely.
You can have your own little cluster fundraiser party in Miami, Florida, Los Angeles, even in India. Raise your funds and send it to Dr. Gopal. You don't have to be here. This is something important. She's been recognized by the United Nations, and the organization is doing a tremendous, great work, and it needs everybody's support. And we are here today from the Global Eye magazine to support you.
Thank you.
And we are very happy to have you, Dr. Gopal,
Thank you so
on
much.
on this Dr. VGP Talk Show. And on our part, we'll do a Global Eye conclave to raise awareness. And we'll do conclave in different metropolitan cities, also in India, Africa, and other countries. We will take your message across, help you and assist you to take your message across the world. We will also help you in your fundraising and contributing, because you are doing something which I haven't seen anybody else do, trying to help, giving tremendous integrated help for the victims of human trafficking who have innocently fallen into that trap. And we want to raise awareness and prevention, so we will have less number of victims of human trafficking. Winding up this most enlightening interview, Dr. Gopal, thank you for giving us time amidst your busy
Thank you
schedule.
so much. I am so grateful
And
to Dr.
could you
VGP.
tell us, Dr. Gopal, if you are to take 3 people out for dinner from the past or present, who would those 3 people be?
My mother, Nancy Jackson, that young lady, and my teacher from 3rd grade.
What's her name?
Mrs. Moses.
Mrs. Moses, from Bangalore.
From Bangalore.
Which school did you study?
Francis Xavier's.
Francis Davis. So Dr. Gopal says if she's given a chance to take 3 people from the past or present for dinner, one will be her mother. What's mom's name?
Mrs. Prema Gopal.
Mrs. Prema Gopal, wife of Brigadier Gopal. And one will be Nancy Jefferson, the young 14-year-old girl in Chicago and who was a victim of human trafficking, who passed away and left her 3 children. And third, her 3rd grade teacher in Francis Xavier School in Bangalore, Mrs. Moses. And that gives you how the mindset of this life change maker Dr. Gopal is. Dr. Gopal, if we have to describe you in 3 words, what would those 3 words be?
Exhausted, but very passionate about my work. I think the most beautiful thing is I'm getting paid for what I love to do, which is amazing. But the 3rd word, I guess, would be just love life, glad I'm alive.
Okay, Dr. Gopal's describing herself in 3 words. She's very passionate about her work, and she's a lover of life, and she's exhausted. I would rephrase that as she's tireless. I think that's what she meant.
Okay.
In pursuing her passion. Dr. Gopal, it's been an enlightening experience for all of us to hear about you, and we are going to hear more about your Safe Coalition for Human Rights and what you're doing. We'd like, in closing, give a message to all our viewers, what you would like to tell them in parting.
I think when we take women or men from a place of hopelessness, we need to give them the tools, not by actually giving it to them, but guiding them so that they can learn the tools on their own with that guidance so that they become self-reliant. If we give them welfare, if we dole out money to people, they won't know how to live their life without it. But if you teach them how to make a living, then they will make a life.
Great. Very well said. Thank you so much, Dr. Gopal, for that enlightening interview and being with us on Dr. VGP Talk Show. Dr. Gopal's passing message for all of us is she would like to make people self-reliant, and that's what is her mission in life. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.